Hey guys, welcome back to the Grey Escape podcast, the pandemic podcast, the post-election podcast, the please help me find my sanity podcast. I hope that you guys are all doing really well. We're in it together. Just remember that no matter how alone you feel, we are all alone together. The world self-isolates. Except for those countries that really had it all together, and they're kind of past the self-isolating. But for us, poor, humble people living in places like the United States, we're still self-isolating big time. I'm in Los Angeles. We still have the lockdown going. They did just open outdoor dining for restaurants. So that's something already surreal to drive down the street and see people eating on patios and stuff. It's got an eeriness in Los Angeles, a kind of a post-apocalyptic eeriness. But I digress. I have an episode to get on with and music and stuff to segue into the episode. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be right back right after this. As always, if you need to transfer currencies and you don't want to pay fees, those nuisance fees that eat away at your hard-earned, hard-saved money, go to thegreyescape.com/cash, or just go to thegreyescape.com, frankly, and click on any of the sponsor links. Not only will you get hooked up there, you're going to get a £500 currency transfer for free, or your currency equivalent. So wherever you are in the world, odds are your currency is serviced by this great company. Richard Branson is a part owner of this company. They're solid. I've used them a bunch. So check it out by going to thegreyescape.com/cash, or just thegreyescape.com. I really have to refine this commercial. I think you'll agree. It needs work, but the sentiment is real and the sentiment is honest. So my guest today, if you've been with me for the long haul on the Grey Escape, you might have heard this gentleman before, because he has been on the podcast twice already, and someone from his organization has been on. So this is the fourth time that Aura-Soma has been represented on the Grey Escape podcast. You guys have heard me talk about this in many episodes. It's one of the most amazing companies, co-founded by Mike Booth, who you are about to meet. This company is like no other, and frankly, Mike Booth is like no other. It's a company founded on all that is good, that is holistic. It's a company that listens to nature. They listen to the earth. Literally, they follow the stars. Everything's really kind of cutting edge and kind of ancestral at the same time, if that makes sense. They have a scientific state-of-the-art lab, which I've been to. I absolutely love their products. I'm not endorsed by this company. I simply genuinely love Aura-Soma. I believe in everything that it's about. And without further ado, I'd just like to dive in to this podcast. It's many people's guru of holistic well-being. Maybe he's your guru waiting to happen. Maybe he's got information to enlighten you right now in the next hour or so. Open your ears and open your heart to Mr. Mike Booth. All right. I want to see you nice and big as well. I'm trying to get you on my screen. I want the big side of Mike. Oh, there we go. Look at you. You look like a bishop with your scarf.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? I thought I'd do a regal thing tonight.
You look like you're working, like you're a colleague of the Pope.
That sort of thing, yeah.
With your red scarf. How, oh my gosh, I mean, it must have been 3 years since we last sort of saw and spoke to each other, right?
Something like that. I think we were about 3 years, weren't we?
Yeah, part 2. Look at you with all your stuff around you. It looks like you're in Tibet.
Yeah, I've just moved from the big house to the coach house behind the house and sold the big house. So I've done a little setup where I do my Zoom sessions from, and this is it.
Oh, it looks very proper, very proper. What is this statue behind you? This.
Kuan Yin.
Oh, and what's the significance of the statue? It's a lady.
Compassion,
Compassion.
Generating compassion. And I do little offerings to her every now and then. I think it's what we need at this point in time,
Yes, yes. Now, we've probably got people who will be watching this in video on YouTube and also listening from around the world. So I have to be mindful for people listening to describe what I'm looking at here. So Mike is in a white turtleneck, looking very debonair, I must say, with a long red scarf draped around his neck.
Coral, Natalie.
Oh, it's coral. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, coral. And behind him, there's a porcelain statue of a lady looking very peaceful. And what did you say her name was? The statue?
Kuan Yin.
Kuan Yin.
Kuan Yin.
I've got to be honest, I've never heard of her. And a little bit of red roses, or are they magenta roses?
Magenta,
magenta. Okay. So, well, you first of all, you look incredible, Mike. You look so healthy.
I've just come back from a month in Mexico, Natalie, and I did swimming every day, and it's just, very good for me, being-wise, and also I feel for my soul, visiting the sacred sites and being on the beach each day, walking, very, very good.
I mean, you look the most healthy I think I've ever seen you from when I met you probably over 6 years ago now, I think about. I mean,
probably.
You're radiating. Now, how is it you're traveling during COVID? How's that happening?
I was in Colombia in October, November, and I was there for a month, and I did a trip in the Andes. And in Colombia, once you're in, it's not so restrictive as long as you're wearing a mask. Even people in cars wear masks in Colombia, which is a bit strange, but nevertheless, that's what happens there. And then instead of coming back to Europe, I decided that I'd extend that South American piece, so that then I had the opportunity to be where I wanted to be over Christmas, New Year, which I've done for the last few years, maybe 3 or 4. And, I like to be in Chichen Itza for the New Year. And, so traveling to Mexico from Colombia was not a problem, just, a little bit more time in the airport and all of that, but really fine. Europe's a whole different thing, as you probably know.
Well, I mean, I haven't traveled now for a very long time, so I don't know quite what's going on travel-wise with Europe. I mean, I don't know if the airports are quiet, if they're dead, or if they're flooded with people wearing masks.
Well, when I came back in, it was pretty quiet, I have to say. But and that's the first time I've been in the UK since October.
Wow. And I can see you've got a bit of color as well. Now, when you were swimming in Mexico, are you sort of are you in a resort with a pool? Are you in the ocean?
Ocean, Natalie. I don't like chlorine, so it's only ocean swimming that I do.
Wow. I think I want details on this place. Just looking at you, I think you're an ad for this place. And so how long were you there total in Mexico?
About a month.
Wow. Oh, how beautiful. Now, do you go by yourself or do you go with family?
Yeah, with a friend. But no, family had their Christmas at New Year in the UK. And I was very much in my own space and enjoying that opportunity to be at the sacred sites, do my Zooms and meditations for the global community of Aura-Soma from the Andes and then from Mexico.
Do you find I mean, it sounds quite extensive, the travel. Do you find you get very drained, or because of all the holistic things, your secrets that you know about that help you, do you find you're able to cope really well with things like jet lag and, you know?
I don't believe in it, Natalie. I haven't done for 20 years. You know, I've been traveling 9 months of the year for the last 35 years. So, you know, my belief system that jet lag was something that we need to concern ourselves about is really something that died about 20 years ago. I believe that if you visit your acupuncturists, you know, sort of as well as all the things that I do with Aura-Soma, then, you know, basically jet lag is not so much of a problem. Adjusting your body clock is. Sometimes you get off the plane and you have to appear on the TV, or you have to do an interview somewhere, you know, and then you can't be not in your body and not present to what's happening, you know.
So it's truly mind over matter. It reminds me, I read your daughter Lilith, she sent me the write-up about Ceres, which I know we're going to be talking about, your new and exciting bottle. And I made a couple of notes of things that really jumped out at me in the text of what you'd written, of your first thoughts of this bottle. But I wanted to ask you, and I know my partner Jason, who you know, who's also another big
Who I love.
and he loves you. We both love you, and we're fans of just everything that you are and everything you do. Like, we feel, both of us, so privileged to know you, and by strange twists of fate to have come across Aura-Soma and you. You know, you're just one of those rare entities. I don't know anybody like you, where everything you do and everything you're about is for the betterment of everyone around you and for the planet. I mean, it's just so incredibly positive. You're like a radio network that goes around beaming positivity to people and solutions with the products that are born in your company, you know, solutions and things that people can believe in, that really there's nothing to lose. Like, if you take a chance on any of your products, it's not like when you take a medication and, well, there could be side effects. If you buy a bottle of Aura-Soma, there's really nothing to lose. You could only benefit. The worst case scenario is you're going to smell really nice. You know?
Yeah, we do have this saying, Natalie, which is nothing in the bottle, whether it's the herbs, the crystals, the colour, nothing will activate unless it's for the greater good of the person who's working with it.
Right. How has it been with the pandemic for Aura-Soma? I mean, have you found, because of, you know, people struggling with finances, has there been sort of a decline, or have you found a surge because people are looking for help?
I haven't really taught much live for well, since the end of 2019. I did 3 courses in Europe in the sort of the end of the summer, the autumn. I did Austria, I did Switzerland, and I did Italy. But those are the only 3 that I did in 2020. I didn't do any others. The actual company and the production side is roughly plateaued from 2018 to where we are now. And the last 3 months, I would say, looking at the figures and bottle output, it looks like percentage-wise things are increasing again.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I would imagine that, because the last count, and this is going back years ago, you had about 30,000 practitioners around the world. So
something like that.
Yeah. And so I would imagine all of those practitioners all over the world, their clients and the people that they help holistically and spiritually would be coming to them. I mean, people, what's coming out of the news here now is this, we're starting to hear now about the massive toll on mental health. I don't know how it is in the UK, but they're starting.
I'm sure it's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the sense that people are finding the second lockdown and the family situations and the not being able to socialize, an incredible mental and emotional strain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've even had here some children have committed suicide because they just can't handle not being in school. They can't handle not having their friends. And that's something in my life, I've never heard of such a thing of children being in that sort of a dire situation, So I would imagine the clients of your practitioners would be seeking assistance. And when I read what Lilith had sent me, I found it was a couple of things really jumped out. And one of them, and I guess these are your words in a large passage that you wrote on this new bottle called Ceres. And it says, let's see how it is that it might be helpful in relation to healing the timeline, both for ourselves in this life and also the causal factors genetically or ancestrally that have left us where we are now that need to be reevaluated. And it was like, maybe now in our ancestral timeline, now's a bit of a time to check in and go, what are we carrying about from, 1,000 years ago? Somebody,
for me, Natalie, what happens with that is, working with the bottle, and I'm on my second one now since it was born. What comes up is what you need to look at, whether that's something parental, it's part of the mother's lineage, whether it's from the father's lineage, or whether it's from some previous soul life or an association with that soul life. It's what comes up that you need to look at. It's not like arbitrary or, that you have to deal with the whole thing all at once. With these bottles that stimulate that sense of going into the timeline, it's really like you're giving an opportunity to all of the things that are unresolved, have another little look at them to be able to move on, to be more present where we are now. So it's like, you see something, you absorb something from the past, and that empowers you to be able to be more present, to be able to be more with it now.
By the way, this rattling anybody could hear is Mike and his copious amounts of bracelets that he's wearing.
Yeah, I've just got some new ones in Mexico as well, so there's even more to rattle.
All right. We'll try and be careful with your bangles there, Mike. In the podcast.
I'll push them up.
So to what you just said, so this is very timely for me. You have no idea. I think I might have alluded to you. I honestly can't remember because, as many people, sometimes life's just a blur. But I have quite a significant trauma in my past, and I've been struggling now for, I had an official diagnosis a couple of years ago now with PTSD. And I was before the pandemic, I was getting acupuncture, which was phenomenal, the acupuncture. And at the time I was even using your green Aura-Soma bottle. I can't remember what the number is, but you put it on your heart. Yeah, and it was so soothing, that was. And of course, I was getting so many holistic treatments, which were really helpful, much more than any pharmaceutical thing. So I would go to the acupuncturist and he'd do cupping, which I loved, and acupressure. And I would come out, no PTSD symptoms. I've had stuttering, shaking, very bad, like convulsive, like shaking. And it was wonderful. And of course, the pandemic hits. I can't go to acupuncture, I'm afraid, still to now, to go to acupuncture because of germs and stuff. I've hardly been out. And so...
Is that because your acupuncture won't see you? Or
what? No. He's really close by. I'm afraid to go into the facility. I've got toothache and I'm afraid to go to the dentist because I'm just afraid of going and catching COVID, basically. I won't lie. I'm just nervous. I'm somewhat high risk because I have mild asthma. And I also have nearly died in the past from pneumonia, oddly and coincidentally, in China when it was COVID part 1, which was SARS. And I was in China for SARS, in hospital for a week. And I think I actually had SARS, but they just told me I had pneumonia. And it was terrifying. So because I've got that frame of reference of what it feels like to have a respiratory illness and to not be able to breathe, I'm definitely very afraid of COVID. But the trauma...
what Rudolf Steiner said about that, Natalie?
No,
he
go ahead.
said that pandemics really were a symptom of collective fear.
Well, how do we combat that?
The only way to combat that is, we have to love our way through it. Love and fear can't exist in the same space. There is no possibility unless it is that we let go the fear and find the way towards loving ourselves enough to find the strength to overcome when fear comes up. And that love that we need, that love that's so essential for us, is really the antidote to what it is that the pandemic symptoms display for us.
I'm probably a real trouble case there for you. Because of the PTSD, I'm very gripped with fear, like it's a big problem with me. When I go to bed at night, I'm full of fear. I'm full of fear because of this trauma I had in my life, and there's been a re-traumatization of it. And so it's very at the forefront of my mind. You probably see I'll start to shake just talking about this. Now, I don't shake if it's not on my mind, but I'll probably start to shake and maybe even stutter or something. Hopefully not. But when you were saying about things coming up, what's happened with me in the PTSD now is I've been in counseling, and it's involved me speaking with people close to me in my family and sort of things coming out of, what happened. And for example, there's someone I know close and dear to me, and there's pain and trauma that person has, and it's sort of too great to deal with. And so I find that it's conflicting with what you're talking about, because you're saying we need to get those traumas out and deal with them, whether they're for me, I'm just talking about stuff in this life, but you're even going deeper than that and thinking of things from past lives or ancestral lives. And there's a real present situation that I'm going through now, that's that struggle with the pain of dealing with something, like talking about it and dredging up things from the past that are very painful, whether to bring them up or to just gloss over them and distract yourself with things, basically. So I'm a real test subject for you right now to preach to.
Yeah, how much is yours? How much is collective? How much is associative? It's very, very difficult to know. These things that we experience, and particularly with what's going on in the collective at this point in time, and particularly where you are, I would say the fear situation is, almost materialized. It's tangible. It's something that's very, very evident. To actually detach from that and to not identify with it really is quite an effort. And it is an effort that isn't the ordinary sort of effort that we have to make. It's an effort which means relaxation, it means letting go, it means really caring for ourselves at a completely different level. The idea with series is not, to bring up the traumas from the timeline. The idea with series is that in the subtle way that color works with the herbs, the plants, the crystal energies, that all of those things that we need to look at come up, and we have the potential to gain insight into those things and be able to work with them in a more compassionate, in a more caring way.
I need 10 bottles of series by tomorrow.
I'll make sure you get one this week. Definitely, Natalie.
I also apologize for saying it wrong. So it's spelled CERES, in case anyone wants to Google it. It's worth Googling for the look of the bottle alone is so stunning. I mean, Jason and I looked at it this morning from Lilith's email, and both of us are just like, oh my God, look how beautiful it is, which is always the thing still that is so remarkable to me with Aura-Soma, because that's what first brought me to it. I was strolling around in Glastonbury, you know, in a sound singing bowl workshop, and I see them in a store there lit up, all the bottles, which, would it be right, was it about 115 bottles at the time?
At that time,
yeah.
Yes.
And
when you met it.
Yes, and they're just in a case as though they're a piece of art on the wall. And to describe for people, you've got what looks like Chanel number 5 bottles, and each one has got 2 components to it. Now, I have them all here, Mike. I wanted to show off, full disclosure. Whoops, I wanted to show off to you. So look, now I've got loads of them, but here's just some of them. So I've probably got about 12. Now, of course, people are lucky. This one, you can see I use the most, this one.
Yes.
I love it. Bottle 103, which I believe you said was Vicky's bottle too. So that's what
she was very influenced.
I love that bottle.
Yeah.
So for people listening, I'm holding, literally, you'd think I was at Saks Fifth Avenue holding a beautiful perfume bottle that's going to cost hundreds of dollars. And the bottom of it is one color and the top fluid is a different color. And everything in it, it's like the world's most magical potion. You've got crystals, herbs. I mean, you can probably tell even more, but this is what I know about them. And the smell of them. So you get so many layers of just this wonderful feeling, just looking at them and then smelling them and then the texture of them. But I digress. Okay, so we're going back to Ceres, series. Okay, now I find series. Now this is interesting that you pronounce it series, because my brain immediately thinks of a series as you'd have a television series, and that there's a chronology then. So so just the word series makes me think, oh, there's a timeline. Yeah. And that, like a television show, we have access to that timeline.
Yeah.
You can go into
both past and future.
Yes, and I feel that just from that word series, I think, oh, you can go into the DVR of your life and go.
Don't we wonder in the same way about the series? What's the next episode going to be?
And what's an episode we might have forgotten that's having repercussions now that aren't positive?
Yeah. And, you know, what enabled us to create the situation in the world and manifest what it is that we're dealing with? Because there must be within each of us some threads of responsibility for what it is that we're experiencing.
I mean, it gets so tricky there, but I've read a lot about sort of that philosophy that everything that's happening on some level, you've manifested it. And of course, the flip side is how to rationalize when people get a horrible illness. I mean, you remember I was very close with my aunt
yes.
when she was passing away.
That was about when we were last in touch. You
yes.
were dealing with the whole situation of her transition.
Yes. And I spent 5 months in Canada, basically put my life on hold to go and help my mum with my aunt for 5 months. And Aura-Soma played a role because I asked your advice in the last podcast. You know, my aunt had liver cancer and you told me how things were upside down and the bottle, would it have been bottle 53? Does that stick in my mind?
Yeah, I mean that's the pale green. Yeah, yes. I think we did refer to that.
Or pale green and pale yellow rings a bell of the one that I got for her, because you said it was 7. Upside down. Things were upside down, but they brought us such comfort and was just such a lovely holistic element, and it brought her peace to have something that she knew was only good in the bottle. And we had so many positive conversations and did therapeutic things. I was helping her doing tuning forks to take her anxiety away, which was really effective. And then I would rub the Aura-Soma, you know, on her feet even to give a little feet massage. And I truly believe those extended her life and helped her feel peaceful. But of course, the end is beyond grim and beyond anything you'd ever wish on anyone. And it's a struggle then to hear words of we play a role in what comes to us. And then that's where I struggle and think, well, how could somebody bring something so terrible upon themselves?
Because each life is just a blink in the eye of the soul. And, that understanding means that, we might be clearing something from a long time ago in that suffering, in that difficulty. And it's the only way that we can cleanse it and come to terms with it as the soul grows or moves forward.
Do you believe, is it sort of a karmic thing where somebody might have done something in one life and pay for it in another life?
Yeah, those sort of things are incredibly complex as far as I'm aware. It's like, you can't say, oh, somebody did this and then they die of cancer in this life. No, it's not like that. It's, all of the factors that person has taken on, either themselves or for others in certain circumstances, has determined which cells are going to respond to the circumstances within themselves that they need to face. Those cells then create the situation or manifest the situation that the person's then got to deal with. But our understanding here in the three-dimensional world doesn't extend to all the other dimensions that we exist in. And, that blink of an eye in the life of the soul is a real key to something which is really important in terms of human life. Every moment, every circumstances that we find ourselves is an opportunity. And the eternal is only available in the moment. It's not available 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. It's only available now. What we do with it now is what's really going to make a difference. It's the only place that we can make a difference to anything. So what we practice, what we put into action now, is really what it is that counts.
To what degree do you think we have the ability to change these things? If you say we're bringing over stuff from another life and the cells might have messaging in them that they're going to play out in a certain way, how changeable is that?
It's Vicky Wall, the founder, the innovator of Aura-Soma, said that there's no situation that can't be turned around. So, that's very much in accord with my own belief system and experience over the last 40 years, I would say, that it's really something that any situation can be turned around. It really depends on many, many factors within the individual as to what can be changed and what can't.
That's very comforting. I think I should choose certainly to lock my belief system onto that. And I do believe that. There's a couple of things that just come to mind. One is just when you said the word blink. We've in the past at a podcast talked about my near-death experience where
Yes.
I got a lot of information come to me. And one of the things that I was left with during the near-death experience, I was shown what looked like an equalizer graph of a song when we used to have those. Like, it seems we don't have those anymore that are on our little cheap radios and stuff. But the whole of our lifetime was so quick. It was so quick that if you showed an equalizer of one song with the little peaks going up and down in that green color, that our whole life would be invisible, and that an entire
like an oscilloscope.
Yes,
really.
and that an entire civilization would barely be one peak of 1 point in those thousands of peaks that go up in a song that you look up. And so I was given a lot of messaging and visuals on time in this world, that it is a blink. And when I sort of came out of the near-death experience, one analogy that I've told to other people who might talk to me and say, well, how do you justify bad things happening? And it felt to me, and of course, this is only my experience. I can't say this is right, this is wrong. This is just my experience. It felt like there was some sort of knowledge coming into our life, knowing what we were going to go through. And the way I would say is, we go to a horror movie to be scared. We want the experience of being scared, which is not that great, to be scared and to be jumping out your seat, but it's an experience. And it feels to me like our life when we're born, it's so quick, it's like a bungee jump. But we know before we come in, I'm going to take a bungee jump and there'll be terror, or there's going to be this, and there could be some really awful experiences emotionally. But we know coming in, we're going to take the bungee jump and it's going to be over in a flash. And then we're done. And it's all just been an experience.
Yeah. You think about, when we're in physicality, everybody is a creature of sensation. So everything that you've just talked about, the horror movie analogy, very much. Why is it that we do that? Because we want the strong sensations. The strong sensations give us a sense of identity. That sense of identity doesn't come when we live loving, when it is we're calm, when it is we're peaceful. That sense of identity is linked to the patterns of strong emotion, the strong sensations that come through fear, that come in the horror movie. All of those strong sensations are intimately seductive. They're pulling us towards a sense of identity, who we are, what we are, and the way we feel ourselves, where we put the I within ourselves. If it is that we begin to get a little bit more peaceful, if it is that we begin to get a little bit more loving, if we find the way towards a bit more compassion towards ourselves, there's less sensation, there's less sense of identity, and there's more openness to the moment, what it is that's happening, and sensation then becomes something else. It becomes enriched. We become more aware. Exactly what you said at the beginning, do we live our lives, pertinent and alive out of the fog or out of the narcosis or out of the sleep? Or do we live our lives, poignantly towards that state of being awake to what's happening now? And that sense of identity, in a lot of sense, really brings us to narcosis. It brings us to a sense of not being who it is that really we could be from a being point of view. If we just relax a little bit, if we just let go a little bit, if we find that way towards caring for ourselves, loving ourselves, breathing peace in the moment, whatever it is that does it for us, that means that we diminish the strong sensations, the fear, the anger, the frustration, the resentment, all of those things that give us the sense of strong identity that is not helpful in relation to what we would really say would be the better way, the peace, the love, the caring, the compassion, the warmth. All of those things are really where we want to be. And yet, yes, we want to go to the horror movie. We want to go to the strong sensations because we're conditioned to look for our sense of identity in the strong sensations rather than the quality that exists when it is that we begin to let go.
It almost sounds perfectly a description of why people go back into abusive relationships.
Absolutely.
Because they're conditioned to those sensations that they deeply feel, whether it's humiliation.
And addictions, Natalie. All of the patterns of addiction, whether that's an addiction to an abusive relationship, whether that's a drug, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cigarettes, whatever it is that we're addicted to, all of those patterns, have behind them the strong sensations that are life negative rather than life positive.
It also, I suppose, it's a bit like better having something than nothing kind of mentality, like with addictions and dependencies on unhealthy people. If you don't know what else lies out there, that in itself becomes dangerous and fearful. I mean, you know, for people in an abusive relationship, they may never, because of their childhoods and stuff, have never known what a normal relationship is. So they don't actually have something to say, well, I'm not going to go here, I'm going to go there, because they don't know that they're yet. So it takes a giant leap of faith for someone to get out of a bad situation, whether addiction or abusive relationships. And I mean, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but that's sort of what I'm feeling from what you're saying. It's patterns of conditioning in our mind and in our emotion that become so familiar to us that even if they're negative, they're familiar. And there's a reassurance in that. There's something secure where even if it's horrible, there's a secure, well, I know I'm going to feel horrible. So that becomes who I am. I'm going to feel I'm going to feel horrible. I'm going to feel scared. Like me right now, I live in fear most of the time. It's become who I am right now.
But Natalie, it's not necessary to be like that. It's not something that you need to do to yourself, really.
Well, I know that logically. It's just very hard. You know, I suppose I've learned lately.
But don't we say that to ourselves? Oh, it's very hard.
Yeah.
As something that then becomes like a fence or an obstacle that we need to get over, rather than, oh, it's really easy. You know.
Right.
You know, like just for a simple thing would be, you know, like how often do you decide to just drop down towards your belly, towards your stomach, towards your guts, and, you know, really drop down there and feel what it is that's happening in the moment in that place, to trust something of your origins, you know, where it is that the umbilicus is and the associated areas with that. You know, if we go there, then there's a sense of a different level than our thoughts or our emotions. It's the interface between thoughts, feeling, and being.
Well, you're absolutely right. And so that I don't appear to be a complete disaster and failure, I can tell you this. Recently, during the pandemic, because I mean, that's been a struggle for everybody. I mean, you know, I was going to the gym only because Jason would drag me to the gym. I would never voluntarily go, but it's so good for your brain, exercising, and it was really keeping a lot of the stress and anxiety and the fear at bay. So the pandemic hits, and it's a double whammy, because there's the fear of the pandemic and there's the lack of exercise at the gym now because the gym's closed. Well, recently, I'd say around 2 months ago, I discovered totally organically on YouTube Tai Chi. And it was 5 minutes a day. And I thought, oh, I can handle that. That's a commitment. I'm all about that. 5 minutes a day, right? And it's a lady called Leah Cohen. And I get nothing from this. I don't sponsor her or anything. But check out on YouTube. It's called Tai Flow, TAIFLOW. And I started doing it. And she's all about breathe down into the belly. And I did find immediately, even within the 5 minutes, a deep peace. And I really have taken to the Tai Chi, and I've only missed a couple of days since then. And I now subscribe to her Patreon, and she's in New Zealand. And it's a bit like with your Aura-Soma bottles, where you get the double whammy of the beauty of the bottles. She's in Wellington, New Zealand, and you get these beautiful vistas where she's doing the Tai Chi, all these mountains and waters, and that has helped me. But I bring it up because you say about breathing into the belly, and it is very helpful to breathe into the belly. So I'm not that bad. I'm doing something.
I think anything that gets us out of the head and not too identified with the negative emotions is really helpful. And you know, the resource that lies at our core, I think, is immense. And if it is we give attention to that, then some of the other things that we have to deal with seem to be a little bit less.
Well, it's been very positive. I tell you, full disclosure, how I've been really naughty, really bad. I've got Everything. I mean, look, I've got the pomanders, which I love.
Yeah.
Again, for listeners. Oh, I love this set so much. You have no idea. I don't even know off the top of my head how many bottles are in here. You probably know?
15.
15 bottles. They're all different colors. They're like little spray bottles that you get when you go by a perfume counter and there'll be some young girl being a bit annoying, spritzing everybody with perfume. They look like these little bottles, but they're beautiful and everyone has a different scent, a different color. I haven't been using the things that I know would help me with Aura-Soma. And I think self-esteem comes into this because of what I've been going through with my past trauma. Worthiness, yes. So somehow I've had this sort of dark thing come back into my life and it makes me feel, these are too good for me. So the bottles are so beautiful. Oh, I don't want to mess them up. I'm going to grab one again. Whoops-a-daisy. Oh, that's the one Jason broke. He broke the lid off.
Right.
I know. But look at this beautiful bottle. But I feel, it's too good. It's all full and perfect. And if I start using it, the level's going to change in the bottle. And with the PTSD, I very badly feel this lack of control over my life. And I need things to be perfect. And it makes things very difficult. So I don't even want to use the Aura-Soma because then it won't be perfect anymore. It won't be a full,
Natalie,
beautiful bottle.
It's not good, Natalie. Really.
I told you, but at least I'm fessing up about it, Mike. I'm fessing up.
That's good. But, why is it we deprive ourselves from what it is that we know is good for us? I mean, that is an amazing thing of itself, isn't it?
It's a powerful thing, and I feel it's a very common thing that we deprive ourselves of what things could help us. And now, with the pandemic more than ever, I mean, I know so many people who have just let the threads of things that could help them just pull away from them. I mean, a lot of us are a disaster right now, Mike.
The word, Natalie, and you're using it very often as we're speaking on this occasion. The word of itself carries something very, very important. There's another bottle that comes before Echo, which I know that you also received some information about. And the last bottle that I think that when we were last speaking, which was called Queen Mab, there's one in between which is called Pam. And this was born before any of the things that we're dealing with now and we're dealing with in 2020. It occurred, really at that point when the whole thing kicked off in China. So Pan is a god, a being, an entity that exists in nature. Pan is that person, that force that is the living thing in all things. It's like an incredibly pervasive force. And that bottle, when it was born, really brought us to an understanding of what the implications of the God in nature is. The nature of any absolute is that everything is included in that absolute. And Pan really showed us how it is that the resource for ourselves during the 2020, during the beginnings of 21, how important nature is. The grass, the trees, the flowers, the herbs, everything that's of a natural order, that's not the screen time that so many people try and find their nurturing through. The moment that you go and hug a tree, the moment that you've got your feet on the grass without any shoes and socks, the moment that you look into a flower, the force of Pan is something which is not only recognizable, it's something which is absolutely essential to our humanness, to our essential nature.
What colour's the Pan bottle?
It's a very, very beautiful one, and it's. I'll make sure that you get to see that very, very soon.
I'm going to be surprised with what color Pam is. I almost wondered if I had it, but I wouldn't have, because my all of my bottles are from, way back now. I think it's good to talk about this openly, though, because I think because everything's all in the right place with you. And I'm now representing the typical person right now who's a bit of a disaster right now in the pandemic. We're finding new ways to cope. And so for me, I found recently the Tai Chi on YouTube. I even got a video game where you exercise, because I realized I was putting on weight. I called it my COVID fat. I suddenly realized I've put on 15 pounds. I had. Now I've already lost 5 of those. But that was how the self-worth had disappeared, that I didn't even care what was happening to my body. I was eating and comforting myself with ice cream and chocolates. And I was like getting fat. And when you wear stretchy clothes, which everybody does in California, these comfy clothes, you can actually put on a few pounds and not even notice, because you never get tight clothes because they're all stretchy. And suddenly I'm like, wow, these stretchy clothes are looking more stretchy than normal. And I bought some scales and I was quite shocked. I put on 15 pounds. But I have done one thing, so that you can know I'm not being too horrible to myself. I've recently turned it around a bit, and I decided enough of this, because I recognized my self-worth was low, and my head brain thinky mind was able to recognize you're not being kind to yourself. You're being kind of cruel and abusive to yourself by putting bad foods in and not nutrition. So right now, this will be day 7 today. I've been on a juice kind of a cleanse. It's not a perfect one. I'm doing it the easy way, because I'm doing the Costco one where you buy 3 days of juices for $20. And I'm not fully trusting in the nutritional content, because I think these things don't even expire till like 2025. So I'm not sure what's left in the juice, that it somehow can be preserved for another 4 years. But I'm on day 7 today. I've lost 5 pounds and I am already feeling better. And it has made a psychological difference to myself, of a bit of a recognition to be kind to my body and to not cast aside my body as just this thing that's an object that I happen to have around me all the time, that I can take my frustrations out on and be nasty to my body kind of thing. It's like, hold on a minute, this is my vehicle for life. Why don't I, give it a bit of a tune up and try and bond to my body again? So that's what I've been going through personally.
Yeah. And I think juicing is really good, but I don't know why you wouldn't just, it's so simple to just juice things yourself. It's not something that you need to get a proprietary thing which has got preservatives in that you don't want. That's not going to help, in a long-term basis. I mean, I think the relief of taking the minerals, the vitamins and so on for the body in a liquid form is good. But, I would really recommend fresh would be much, much better. And the other thing that I think, that you might, I don't know whether you've come across, but one of the things I felt very, very helpful during 2020 and previously on occasions is intermittent fasting. Do you know about that?
I had seen in a little show on YouTube where they were saying how to basically boost your body if you thought you might get COVID, and they actually recommended fasting as an incredible way to boost your immune system. And that's about as far as I got.
Yeah, I mean, all it is, Natalie, is you've got an opportunity to just eat for an 8-hour window rather than, outside that. So, in a 24-hour day, if you think that you're only going to eat in the 8 hours, it can really make a difference, because the rest of the time, then the body has a chance to rest, assimilate, and do what it's meant to do, which is really assimilate all of those things that you've had in your eating. And to me, that made a really big difference, particularly in 2020, practicing that and, working with that window rather than, you've got to have 3 meals a day or, you juice in the morning. And, all of that really made something, for me, very, very helpful.
I like that idea a lot because it's very simple. Just choose your 8-hour window and make sure that's when you're consuming things. And you're absolutely right. It's part laziness. Again, it's that self-worth thing. I know there's an element of that. Am I worth going and spending more money on all these organic juices or buying the discount juice kit from Costco, But I think today, it's no coincidence we're chatting now. I shall go today and I'll buy up some organics, real fruits and vegetables, and I want to keep juicing because I did one for 16 days in 2015 and it was very life-changing. And that was when I learned the power of juicing to rejuvenate your body. I'd already got sort of, aches in my hands, I guess bits of arthritis and joint pains and stuff felt like they were setting in. And I did the juicing for 16 days. I did eat avocado and some banana because I have low blood pressure. And so I had to watch I didn't faint. But it was all natural, all organic, and all the pains, any pains throughout all my body just disappeared. It was so healing and they've stayed away. It was literally like a body reboot that made my body feel 20 years younger.
That's great. That's great. I mean, when you find something that works for you like that, and then, why is it we don't do it more often? Because, those things where we can get a reboot, then even with your speaking about some of the psychological things, some of the emotional things like, your post-trauma situation and so on. Is it possible that, through changes to the chemistry of the body, as the body boosts in its immune system, as the body cellularly gets different information and it becomes lighter through fasting and juicing, that it is that some of those things might also, like the physical body did, get a reboot?
Yeah, I think there's some deep science there to what you've just said that we probably don't even understand yet. That, I mean, there's some...
I've seen it with many people.
I think...
with really chronic situations, making those life changes, and when it's the body that does it, when it is that, we've got the pain, when we got the arthritis, when we got the rheumatism, when we got those things, then, we don't really have a choice. We've got to look for what the input is that's producing that outcome. Whether it is that it's psychological or whether it's emotional things, we don't associate that with the input. Like you said, like the same thing we were just talking about, trauma and fear and all of that, and the essential, looking for the identity through the strong sensations. Same thing with, sweets, like you mentioned chocolate, or, like to comfort foods or whatever those might be. If it is that those are deleterious in relation to our cellular makeup, then that's not going to support our emotional well-being or our mental well-being.
Right. Well, I know there's something we both believe in greatly, which is about the frequencies and everything having a frequency, every word, speech having frequency, colors, herbs and plants. So it makes sense that if you're putting into your body the frequencies of nature, there's going to be like a health symphony going on in your body. And excuse me, much in the way that tuning forks, if you hit one tuning fork, it will make the surrounding tuning forks take on that same resonance. If you put some organics frequencies in your body, they're going to resonate and start to balance to the correct frequency, all your organs, your blood, your cells. That just makes logical sense to me, that if you put a symphony of health into your body, you're combating what's going on of this very dissonant orchestra of unhealth in your body.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, that statement that you made about, you know, what's the difference between a juice that can last for 5 years and what is in there, and if you were to, you know, actually get an organic fruit and juice it yourself and drink it fresh with the vitality that's possible if that took place, then, you know, how much difference
you've just
an emotional or psychological vitality make?
Well, I know there's a huge difference, because I remember in 2015 that when I had the organic juices, oh, hang on a minute, I think you're frozen. Oh, there you go. Now you seem to be back now. There we go. That's nice. So I know exactly where we left off as well. So you were saying about the difference between the juice that's going to last till 2025 and store-bought. And I do remember when I did the organic juicing in 2015, it was like a rush in my body of vitality. The juices, I mean, it was like a drug, truthfully. Like it just popped my whole mind and my body open to feel so full of life. And I will say, with the Costco discount juices, I have not felt that. I haven't felt that rush of nutrition going through my body.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, there could be something to that. Yeah. There's something else in your write-up of your New Bottle series. There was a couple of things I wanted to touch on. And this was just what we were talking about. In your write-up, you put every thought and every feeling carries a frequency, a seed for something that is to emanate in the world. And I do believe that very deeply. So I just wanted to...
Yeah, every thought, every feeling, everything that we think, everything that we feel is a transmission. You know, we're both receiving and transmitting all the time. And we're not just one station that's doing that. We're 7 stations at a minimum. So all the time, that transmission, that reception is taking place. And that, you know, it refers back to everything that we've been speaking about so far, Natalie. You know, this whole thing of the oscillating thing on the timeline, you know, the sense of the blink of the eye. You know, all of those things relate to our transmission and our reception. You know, our facility in relation to what it is that takes place is something that is really incredible. You know, we only use such a small fraction of who it is that we could be. We only use our resources in relation to our being, a tiny percentage of that, to be able to function. You know, we talked about, you know, the narcosis or the sleep, and how it is that, you know, when we're identified with the fear, when we're identified with the negative emotions, that diminishes the actual quality of our sensations. You know, we're on a spinning ball going around another spinning ball that's moving incredibly quickly through space. Where it's going, where it's come from, not so important. Just the fact that no 2 moments are really the same. No 2 moments really have any similarity because of that phenomena of the speed of the rotation of the Earth and the sun around its sun, you know, the sun behind the sun. All of that's moving through space. And yet we believe, you know, that we are the same as we were at the beginning of the conversation. We believe that we are the same as we were born. We believe and we hold on to all of the things that, you know, we feared or we've been angry about. And those influence that moment because we brought those ghosts of the past into the moment. Not that the moment is essentially free. The moment is of itself pristine. It's what we bring into it that creates the problem.
I love that wording of bringing the ghosts, and you have that. I think there was 3 things, and that was the third one that you had. See, yeah, here it is. So each moment is essentially free, and it is only what we bring into the moment from conditioning or the ghosts of the past that corrupts the energy of the moment. And that was the most powerful one for me, actually. Just that the ghosts of the past corrupt the energy of the moment.
Yeah, you did a session with Sean, and one of his favourite quotes that he has of things that he's heard me say 100 times is this thing about the rotation of the Earth around itself, and then the rotation of the Earth around the Sun, and the Sun around the Sun behind the Sun. He really likes that one. And I think that, you know, if we got that perspective a little bit more clear, then we wouldn't hang on to the ghosts of the past in the way that we do, because of that letting go, the sense of the identification with the negative emotions that resurrects the ghosts of the past. Because if we know that every moment is essentially free, if we know that it's pristine, why would we bring all of those ghosts into the past? And why would it be that we occupy our space with what it is that we don't want to be, rather than what we would like to be, when we let ourselves be what it is that we are?
So why do we? Why do we bring these ghosts?
Condition factors, it's called, Natalie. You know, you mentioned at one point, well, is it karma? Well, condition factors and karma have a lot in common.
I haven't heard this expression, condition factors, before.
Yeah, you know, like we speak, we think, we feel, because it is that we're modeled genetically and psychologically on our parents. You know, that's the vehicle that we're inhabiting. The vehicle is a composite of the sperm hitting the egg, a single cell that was then to replicate, to produce the multicellular organism that we are. So the conditioned factors existed in that first cell. What determined your hair color, what determined your eyes, what determined your height, everything was already in that first cell. So the conditioned factors, including some of the ancestral seeds, the ancestral inheritance in relation to the mother's lineage, the father's lineage, and also what it was that attracted us to that situation of our consciousness being associated with that first cell at the moment of conception.
Do you think, do people choose? I mean, you say being attracted to it. Do you mean that, say, a soul would see a combination of sort of personalities get together? You'd be like, oh, Bill's going out with Debbie. I always thought Debbie was fun. I think I'll be her child, kind of thing, that they're actually drawn to certain, you know, developing souls. Groups
go from life to life together. You know, like, you know, you might have been your father's mother. You might have been your mother's sister. You know, those things go life to life. You know, you've lived thousands and thousands of lives, Natalie, to do what it is that you do. You know, we each are in a situation, we're not new to this whole thing. You know, this blink of an eye thing is something which is, you know, a reality. And these thousands of lives that have brought us to where we are now is really an opportunity in, like a bee, you know, doesn't ask another bee, where shall I put my bit of wax? A bee knows where to do that, to make perfect hexagrams without talking to the other bees about what to do. And they all do that. Human beings are a lot more recent on the planet than the bees are. But, you know, we are learning. We are interdependent and independent at the same time. We're autonomous, and we're also part of a collective. And all of that information, causative factors, condition factors, taken into account, why is it that we don't allow ourselves to be what it is that we are, so that we can put our bit of wax where it needs to be?
We're so bad with our wax, Mike. We're so bad. I mean, how many civilizations ago were the bees where we are now, where the bees are like, your wax sucks. That's not a hexagon. You're building squares and you're screwing this whole kind of, we're not even getting honey, you know.
Let's not denigrate squares, Natalie, because that's one of the things that we should really honor, that it's one of the sources of stable consciousness. And, you know, we could have another whole conversation about that.
Ooh, I like that you've brought up squares, because when I had my near-death experience and I saw the lattice grid of energy balls, it was all squares, you know, but the
I had a similar experience. That's why, and I think we mentioned it maybe in the first podcast.
We've met on another plane, Mike.
Maybe. Who knows?
Or we've been through
I've definitely had conversations with you, which have been ongoing. So it's not like I feel that I haven't seen you for a long time. It feels like yesterday.
Ah, that's nice. Yeah, it's for us. It feels like family always. Like I literally had to talk to myself in my head before this podcast and think, make sure that you kind of are reverent to Mike and show him respect. Because I just feel like, oh, hey, Mike. And I'm like talking to myself going, remember that this guy's like a spiritual guru to 30,000 people.
He's just a very ordinary person just trying to do his best. That's all he is.
But who's special and in tune with something special. I mean, if we've all had thousands of lives, why are we so bad at them? We should have nailed it by now. There should be no violence.
The answer is in the question, Natalie. You know, you think about that judge that sits on our shoulders that's judging us all the time about what it is that we're doing and how it is that we're behaving. You know, that judge says, oh, this is bad, that's good. You know, it's not helpful, really. You know, one of the things I'd really recommend you having to go with at some point is Lady Portia. You know, in your little set of quintessences, if you've still got one of those, then there must be one which is the 59 bottle Lady Portia, to help us to suspend the judgment of ourselves. Very, very helpful. And particularly this year, I think it's going to be fundamental. The judgment thing seems to be very, very strong. You know, the way in which we judge ourselves for everything that's going on, everything that's taking place. You know, we touched on responsibility. You know, why do I manifest this in my life? Why did I choose to be here at this point in time in terms of the whole of what's happening in these years? And it's because there's such an opportunity for awakening. And that awakening, you know, why you do what you do, why you offer these conversations for people is all because, you know, we're in the right time, we're in the right place, doing the right thing. And if we could get the judge the way, it's not that we're bad, it's that we're really just doing our best to do what it is that we do, to allow ourselves to be what it is that we are, as kind of, well, you know, this is an alternative to getting too stuck in things which are not so helpful.
Judgment is a very big enemy. And I feel, I've talked about this on another podcast with Jessa Reed, I feel it goes hand in hand with expectation. And I feel judgment and expectation are like handcuffs, because with expectation, of course, it's the same as judgment. You're thinking something's going to be a certain way. So it can monstrous. For one, we don't have any control over. So there's a sense of control in needing to control outcomes, and when you have an expectation, I feel you're immediately setting yourself up for disappointment, or you're closing the door to what might be that could be better than you ever expected.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, also what we were talking about worthiness. You know, the judgment is what leads us to feel unworthy, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, the unworthiness, I mean, it's I've really been through the ringer with that. Luckily, I mean, I've been getting counseling for quite a long time now in a good place that's offered here in Los Angeles for my particular situation. We're talking a long time, though, to get into a better place. I mean, it's almost sort of like, you know, going through a period of being a little bit suicidal with just when things get too much. And there was a re-traumatization, and I mean, it really set the boat off keel with me, off kilter, and now I'm back, but it's taken a lot of time, and I'm such an advocate of talk therapy. Like, I'm a huge advocate of people finding counseling, having been through situations where you just can't get through things by yourself without turning to unhealthy means, whether it's drugs or alcohol or self-harm in some way, a self-harm of anesthetizing. But this talk therapy, I feel it holds a lot of magic. And it's a bit like you with your bottles, where you say you have to address the things. Talk therapy is the safe place to address the things that you're carrying through your life that are very harmful. Like you're carrying an energetic tumor in your life. I think if you've had bad things happen and you're not addressing them, part of your life force and energy is supporting this tumor of energy. And if you can talk through it and somehow, and with products like yours, you can somehow exercise this energy out of your life. You're literally getting rid of a tumor of horrible energy. And now you've got way more energy in your own spirit to do nice, positive things and allow new opportunities and allow to discover more about yourself. Who am I when I'm not carrying this weight around with me? What is my spirit free to do when it doesn't have to put so much energy into hiding this situation, making sure that situation's buried and suppressed? That takes energy to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, what you're describing there to me is toxicity. You know, it's like a mental, emotional toxicity. And it really relates back to, you know, what we were also talking about, the fasting and the juicing, you know, how these things can be supportive of our work with ourselves, while it is that we work with things like Aura-Soma to support the deeper levels of ourselves, the herbs, the plants, the crystals, the color, really support all of the levels of our being, all of those transceivers at the 7 levels of ourselves, and how it is that they need to come into balance for the toxicity to be diminished, that it allows us to be what it is that we are, to come in touch with our being, dropping down inside ourselves, coming to the belly, diminishing the toxicity that is the emotional or mental baggage that we carry. And it might not only be the trauma of a specific instant or the trauma that's revisited or re-stimulated or triggered in some particular set of circumstances. The cellular level of that might be ancestral. It might be a journey that your great-grandmother went through in terms of something that is able to be locked into at a cellular level, that then has the opportunity to create the toxicity that is the baggage that needs to be released when it is that you do the fasting, when you do the juicing, when you work with Aura-Soma, when you do your Tai Chi. That diminishes that identification with the toxic state. And I mean, the ultimate toxic state is we don't want to be here. That sense of suicide or not wanting to be here is when it is the toxicity gets to the extent that it is that we can't face the situation that it is that we've identified with.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very inspired. I shall be going and buying my groceries today to get to do the proper healthy juices. I feel almost, I suppose I'm a bit of a fan of analogies, but it feels like the good frequencies in your body will naturally, if you look at it, say like fingers, if the healthy and organic stuff, the fingers are open and they release anything bad from your body. Whereas if your body hasn't got good stuff in it, the frequencies could be bundled up and keeping a hold of bad energy inside of you. So I like to think of putting pure stuff in your body as a way to release impure things, even on an energetic level, in history that you don't even remember consciously, which I know I have. I know I have stuff that I don't even remember to do with the situation that was so traumatic. I only remember parts of it, but my body remembers everything. So I feel like putting the juicing and working with Aura-Soma is a way to let my body let go of memories that it holds on to.
Yeah, and I mean what you said also about, going to the gym or the Tai Chi, to re-educate the body and to exercise, and to move the body is also to change the cellular information, which is absolutely crucial in the process of detoxification, because you can do any amount of fasting or juicing or using Aura-Soma, any amount of that. If it is that you're not moving, if the body doesn't get some possibility in relation to a different type of expression, muscularly, cellularly, then it's unlikely that the changes that are being sought are going to come about. And what you said about talking therapy, what it is that happens in an Aura-Soma consultation when somebody has the opportunity to sit with 4 bottles that they've been called to and have somebody listen to why it is that they've chosen them, what it is that person has within themselves that's made them be called to those particular colours. Out of 120 different colour combinations, then to choose 4, it becomes very, very specific in relation to the kind of communication that needs to come about to be able to look at what it is that the toxicity might be, that it is that then is very, very helpful when it is that we do that to be able to move on. Everything that is toxic in that sense within ourselves is like the manure to grow something different. The manure is necessary to grow the roses. The manure is necessary to grow the vegetables. On the farm of Aura-Soma, the most important place is where it is that we do the compost. The compost is our biggest investment in relation to the farm. Okay, we do the infrastructure, the roads, the tracks. We do the sheep and the cows, which generate the fertility to the soil. But the microorganisms that are generating through the compost is what makes the herbs be the vitality that we need them to be able to help us to create the products, whether that's Aura-Soma or whether it's the cosmetics that we produce, the AOS, the active, energized organic skincare range that we produce. All of those things are dependent on the compost. The same within ourselves. Exactly all the things that we've been talking about today. In a way, we've talked quite a lot about the compost, what it is that the present situation faces us with. Well, what can we do with that compost? We can feed the soil that's going to grow the new seeds. The new seeds are the consequence if we do the exercise, if it is that we do the practice, if we do the Tai Chi, if we give ourselves the opportunity to apply the Aura-Soma to ourselves, the bottle that calls to us the most gives us back to ourselves. It allows us to be what it is that we are.
I absolutely love that. And it's so, as I'm sure everybody listening knows, it's absolutely right. For me, that resonates very deeply about the manure because, as you know, throughout my life with different things, I've turned the bad into something good in the way of manure. So I did go through a period in 2001 to do with this same trauma. And I was in counseling there, and I was very suicidal, and I had paints, and I started to paint, and basically came out of feeling suicidal 30 days later with 44 paintings. And those paintings had kind of healed me. They'd exercised the feelings out of me. So it was a creative outlet from terrible, ugly, oily depression and self-hate and just the horror of when you feel that level of depression that you can't even cope anymore, which I went through in 2001. Turning it to a creative means was both healthy to me and became healthy to others, because then the paintings went on in quite a big capacity to help and inspire other people. And then more recently, I've been writing poetry and songs, and I find those are the antidote to the fear. I sit with my poetry book as though it were a drug, a pen and a notebook. And when I feel really bad, it's just get the notebook and I write poems and songs, and it comes out. And that to me is the manure of my bad feelings, my life experiences that have forged this sludge sometimes energetically that's so painful, can be dealt with by expressing it and allowing other things to grow, like poetry, music, paintings, art. And I'd always like to take an opportunity in the podcast to say to people, whatever level of struggling that you have, from the bottom of my heart, if there's a way you can take it and turn it into something. And literally, if it's taking some scrappy paper, post-it notes, and a pencil or a pen, and just writing down how you feel, it's the start of opening up that vein to let the poison out and let the poison become something else. And it has a transmutation of going from poison to either words or some sort of an expression. If you have to sit and beat on a tin can, to try and get a rhythm out that you feel, what would this poison be if it was a rhythm right now? Get it out of you in some way, to me, is the doorway to healing. And I sort of live and breathe that.
Yeah, well, I mean, painting to me is a similar resource in terms of how it is that since 1973, I've been following a particular, let's say, impulse in relation to creativity. And that is something that occurred that has not ceased since that point in time. And my paintings and all of the prints and everything that have come out of that is definitely exactly as you describe it to be. It's the way in which the creative act transmutes the raw material.
Right. And that, I feel, is sort of our gift that we have to offer. If you're a sentient person, most people are, and you feel feelings that aren't pleasant, if you can transform them and let them out, that becomes a gift. You do things that are to the disclaimer, no harm to yourself or others. Just, that's the golden rule, no harm to yourself or others, however you want to get out your angst. Those things can ultimately often go on to inspire other people and be part of a change, like the pebble in the pond. I've had a couple of poems I've read on my podcast, and it's like a pebble in the pond. It takes a few minutes to read, and I've had emails from different places in the world saying, I was really impacted by your poem and it inspired me to do this. And, with you and your bottles, every single bottle becomes something a body experiences. It changes their frequency, and they're now in the world on a slightly different frequency than they were before Aura-Soma, and it's all very positive.
Yeah, I think that that's like a painting of itself in one way. It's having been a potter for 7 years before I met Vicky Wall and began the work with Aura-Soma. That sense of the process of the elements, and working with the earth and the mud, and how it is that you create a form, and then it goes through the fire, and you create a space within the earth that is kind of the container for the air, and the air surrounds and is part of the space. All of that in the work with Aura-Soma, and how it goes out into the world, and the meditations that I've been sharing on the full moon for the last since really last March, then I've really had that sense of the people who are working with the products and sincere with that work are really bringing a different frequency in relation to a kind of matrix in the world that is very different than what it is that most of the collective is identified with.
So you mean sort of all of your network of people, and the people are listening into the meditation, they're sort of being a little bit antidote of the pandemic by not buying into the fear. Is that what you mean?
Let's say if it is that, there's a network that's emerging of a new earth, something that is what we're going through at the moment is like a birth canal, and that, what's coming is much brighter and much sunnier and very different in terms of awareness or consciousness than what's been. Then that transition point that we're in now is something that is, let's say quite shadowy, quite dark, quite full of manure. But
got it.
In the midst of all that, so it is that we've been working with this global network of people who want to make a difference, who are feeling the sense that there's an opportunity to do something different, not get caught up with what's happening in the collective as it is now, in the birth canal towards the new earth. And maybe that's what's necessary and supported from upstairs to come about to enable the possibility of a new consciousness, a new awareness, and how it is that human beings have an opportunity now to enter into something very different. And, like desocialization that's taken place over the last year and a bit, that sense of not being able to relate, and that, we can't sit with one another as we did, and things like that, it all means we've had to look inside ourselves and to come together in those meditations. My sense is that something incredibly beautiful has come to be in the midst of the shadow, in the midst of the difficulties.
Yes, I agree. A lot of people are discovering nature again. They're rediscovering nature because of the social constraints. You've got people kind of going out and about. Even we did. We went on a bike ride yesterday to places I've never in all of my years in Los Angeles been, because normally we would just be going to the gym. So now we're having to find alternate methods to get out and get fresh air and exercise. So we went on a bike ride, and it was actually nice. And I said we would have never done this if it wasn't for COVID. We would have never been going on some hikes that we've gone on recently. We'd just be on a treadmill at a gym, but now we're going walks in nature, which is really nice.
Great resource. And I mean, that's really what I was trying to talk about with Pam. What preceded Echo and what preceded Series was Pan. And that was the beginning of something which you're touching on now, which is really this sense of how healing nature and being in nature can be.
Oh, it is. You can feel it. There's one place, because in LA we're surrounded by just so much energy and activity, and there's a hike luckily not far, and it cuts off all cell signal, and you're just in hills and there's nothing. And you can feel it through your body, this slowing down of energy. Compared to even being in your own home or apartment here, you've got 50 Wi-Fi signals beaming through you of other apartments. You know, there's just so much energy around Los Angeles and the freeways and just the population. Mind you, a lot of people are leaving right now, but that's a whole other story. People leaving.
Why is that?
Well, I guess there's a lot of videos on it. It's very expensive. And I guess since the pandemic, a lot of people who are actors and gig workers, they call it, musicians, they weren't able to work and they couldn't afford to stay here. So they've left. And there has literally been, it's something like the biggest exodus from Los Angeles since like 1900.
Wow.
More people leave.
I wasn't aware of that at all. I didn't know that.
There's an exodus going on right now from LA, and mainly it's because something like in other states, you spend on your rent 26%, for example, of your income. And in LA, it's 46%. So people have to work here just to be able to live here. You have to earn a lot of money to even have anything left over by the time you've paid for your rents and stuff, you know. And of course, in the pandemic, it's really just highlighted it to people. But back to what you were saying, you know, discovering nature and it being a positive opportunity for shifting, you know. Where you live is beautiful in Tetford. I remember that being very lovely, and just going into the property that you have a whole frequency in your body of nature. You just slow down. I think there's also the culture right now. There's the shift of tiny homes. People are starting to wake up in their lives to think, I've been groomed and programmed my whole life that the goal is to make a lot of money and have some swanky house in a nice neighborhood. And people are really realizing now, you know what? The sacrifice on my quality of life to try and do the job to make the money, I could just be living in a tiny house on a plot of land, have no pressure to make money, and just be being and doing what I want to, what my creative being wants to do, without the pressure of it having to even turn into an income. You know?
Yeah. I mean, that to me is part of what I think the New Earth is about, is the simplification and the change of values that leads to more quality and more awareness.
Yeah, I'm all for that myself. I'm all for that myself. I found
it's necessary, isn't it, Natalie? Because there's been too much of an obsession within achievement, goal orientation towards materiality. And, you know, we miss that context of nature, the disconnection with the being of the earth. I think, you know, the terminology is Gaia Alienation. And, you know, that is such a big phenomena prior to 2020 that, you know, maybe something really did need to happen to do exactly the things that we're talking about, to return people to nature, to go for the simpler thing rather than all of those other things.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a vital healing agent for us is nature. And they did a scientific study a few decades ago with university students, and they put them in a bunker and depriving, which you would think, oh, well, that will be depressing being in a bunker. But what they found was that it was the isolation from the natural frequency of the planet. The kids plunged into depression, and all they did to change things was they put basically a little transistor in the bunker that was tuned to the Schumann resonance, and everybody came out of their depression. And it showed how dependent we are for our mental well-being on having some sort of connection to nature, whether it's just sitting in a garden or going for a walk in the park. We really need to have an infusion of nature in our lives on some level, which again comes back to Aura-Soma.
Very much so, yeah. And you know, that whole thing of being able to be involved in all of the things that gives nature an opportunity to be the best that it can be is something which is really important in relation to my intention, what it is that my commitment's really all about, is really what nature does it very well on its own. But what about, instead of just taking from nature, what about if we really bring our consciousness, our awareness to connect up with all of the beingness that's above us and also the beingness within the earth to produce the best plants that we can produce that then goes into the products of Aura-Soma. That whole possibility to me is incredibly exciting. It's as exciting as when it was that I met it 35 years ago.
It's like you're collaborating with nature.
Yeah. A co-creator. We were talking about how important the creation is to detoxify, and that co-creation with the creator, with that creative force, is so, so important.
Yeah, I agree. Well, one thing we probably will wrap up fairly soon, because I know you and I have a tendency, we could talk just all day, basically. But this new bottle series was born, you use the word birth, on December 14th, 2020. And I wondered if you could take us through that process. What actually happens? Where does it start, this birth of the bottle?
It's, if I don't get it in terms of what it is that the creative force that makes Aura-Soma come into being, if I don't get it, then I'm shown it. And what I mean by that is it can be looking out of a train window and the Archangel Michael bottle was born of how it was that the blue sky and a wheat field suddenly in the window frame was 50-50. And I heard somebody say my name. So, that one was very obvious that I wasn't just birthing something that was an internal process. It was something that was shown to me. And similarly with Sandalphon, there was a whole story. And I think we actually mentioned that in our previous podcast, that how Sandalphon was born. But it's a process which is a culmination of internal and external factors. And they are shown to me innerly and outerly. And when Sirius was born, it was maybe a month before I began seeing that relationship of the orange in relation to the deep magenta. In many, many circumstances, a woman would walk into a restaurant with an orange top and a black skirt. And, it's like your awareness comes to that in a kind of very direct way. So, you can't not notice it.
I get it.
And then eventually, then there's a moment when all of the factors come together and we're given a time and a place where it is that the bottle is born.
So on December 14th, take us through the day when you woke up. I mean, was it you involved, or because I know Lilith for a while was involved in the birthing of the bottle? She's
very involved in all the birth of the bottle since she's been involved in the birthing process. It's something that she was destined. Vicky Wall identified her, and she was born 6 weeks prematurely. And Vicky said when she held her on that first morning after she was born, I dedicate my life work and the future of Aura-Soma to you. So in a way, it was part of her destiny to do that. I'm very still involved in the whole process. And, when you say the day, well, the actual process has already taken place, like, from the conception through the gestation to the birth is really when it enters a different dimension. It comes into the 3D. In the laboratory of Aura-Soma, they're given a particular time when it is that birth takes place. And Ceres was very unusual in the whole of the whole time of the birthing of the bottles, because we were told that it was to be born but not released, as though it was that the whole process had to take time to really allow the materialization of what was needed to come to be. So it was born on December the 14th, but it wasn't released, even though produced, until I think it was February the 7th. No, January the 7th.
That's interesting.
That's the first time. Normally they're released the next day or even on the same day, and they go around the world. But people had to wait this time because this release date was something new in the system.
I know exactly what you mean when you say you'd seen the lady in the orange top and the black skirt, and something sort of jumps out to you. Ever since I had my experience in 2012, that happens to me, where just normal things will happen, but there'll be some sort of little insight that goes, you're supposed to pay attention to this now.
Yeah, exactly.
That happens to me.
And my 7 years with Vicky Wall, the person who innovated Aura-Soma in the first place, and when she said to me on a particular day, it's now your time to birth the next bottle, I hadn't got a clue what I was supposed to do then. It wasn't something that I knew. Oh, well, I'd seen her do it. I'd seen her birth bottles for several years. Not something that had occurred to me that she was going to ask me to do it. So I stood in the laboratory, and it was an amazing experience because, I suddenly had all sorts of associations that came into being, which I had not previously put together before it was that bottle was born. And that was the 44th bottle, and it's called the Guardian Angel. And to me, it was like a revelation, because, when you make a kind of synchronized creative act, and it comes to be, then, everything comes together in that moment. When I was a potter, there was moments when I wasn't making the pot anymore. The pot was making itself. And that's the parallel. When you ask me about birthing the bottle, that's my experience of how it is. You're out of the way in one sense, or you become the way, whichever expression is most suitable. Whichever it is, then there's something that happens that is totally synchronized. And as you say, your attention is at a different level. It's a kind of a deep concentration that gives you indication of something other is happening.
I get this exactly. And this book's been written about it. Some people like to label it being in the flow, in the zone. I've had that happen with the abstract paintings where they'll just come out. It happens for sure with the poetry. And I feel somehow almost my best skill, because people will say things I've written and they'll go, oh, this is really good. You're talented. And I feel my biggest talent is getting out of the way so that something else can just write.
Yeah, I've had your painting that you gifted me in my studio where I paint for the last, I guess it's 3 or 4 years, whatever we determine that time period to be. And when I look at that, it also relates to a vibrational level of what we were talking about with the oscilloscope, how it is that what you express there is a vibration that is a creative act that is linear, and yet it's also vibrating. When you look at one of your pieces, I've only got one, but it to me it's really that moment where it is that something is in sync and it vibrates at different levels, and the particular colors, and it's like red, pink, coral, orange, vibrating together produces something which is very much an expression of a particular moment. And I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate your creativity, and as you say, what comes through you in that way too.
I love to think that my painting is with you when you paint and are creative. I didn't know that you had it up,
Well, we've never talked about it since, have we?
No, I think I just literally passed it out the trunk of my car in your parking lot. Remember? Yeah. It was kind of, we got it out the trunk and I was like, I want to give this to Mike. Well, I suppose an important thing is where people can get Aura-Soma, because sometimes...
Whichever country you're in, then all of the practitioners that are active, at least registered practitioners, are on aurasoma.com. That's AURA-SOMA.com. And that website will also take you to practitioners. Every practitioner that's registered has a complete set of bottles, and the opportunity to be able to see what calls to you the most should be availed through whichever country, wherever you are.
Under I studied, and Aura-Soma has all the courses that people can take, and I took the level 1 course to be a practitioner, which I loved doing that course and it was all the color theory, and it touched on numerology, and that was in Cambridge. Are those still happening during the pandemic? Do people teach via Zoom or?
Yeah, I mean, we've discouraged people from offering courses online, and if you go onto the website, then you can see what's available in your country, and that's very much something that is individual relative to the circumstance of the country. I'm going to offer personally some courses in the next year, which will be comprehensive, to take people from the beginning to be able to be fully qualified to be able to be a practitioner. But then, maybe we'll see how that develops in relation to the teachers and how it is that we unfold that during 2021.
Well, my experience was wonderful in your class. I studied with a lady named Wendy, and it was in Cambridge. And it was just a lovely experience, fascinating volumes of information, really taxing both sides of your brain and making them pop, because you've got the logical side and the numbers, and then you've got the just visceral look at the colors though. And we did the readings, which was my, again, first introduction to Aura-Soma. Is I picked out the 4 bottles in Glastonbury and was fascinated when the lady said, well, you can have a reading done, just pick the 4 bottles you're most drawn to. And I mean, it was just so epic for me. It was an epic experience having a reading from the 4 bottles. So then when I studied with Wendy in Cambridge, now I was able to give the readings with the 4 bottles, which I love, that sort of stuff, because it's tapping into all your natural.
Well, that's your talking therapy, isn't it?
Yes, it's the talk therapy via these beautiful bottles.
And what an interface it is, how you can go so deep, so quick, which standard therapeutic means, it might take a long time to get to some of those points, some of those references, some of those factors that the bottles indicate fairly immediately from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, just from my 1 bottle I picked, the lady knew immediately what sort of trauma I was going to have had in my past, just from a bottle I picked. I'm just seeing if I've got Michael, because I think that was the first bottle I wanted to order. I think I've used it all. Oh, hang on. That's not Michael, is it? No, Michael's a bit yellow and a bit blue, isn't it?
I can't see from because of the turquoise wall behind.
Oh, it's my turquoise. It's my green screen, Mike. Yeah,
It's
Michael.
a green screen.
Yeah, it's a green screen. I'm not really outside of a barbed wire in prison. Is Michael's the one though? It's a soft blue and a soft yellow.
Very pale blue and very transparent over a very bright and transparent yellow.
So beautiful. Yeah, I remember seeing that in the book because I bought all the books I could get. I was a proper nerdy Aura-Soma disciple. I got all the books.
Let's not put that past tense, Natalie.
No, well, I still am. I mean, I've got a love affair with Aura-Soma. Like they just have feelings. That's what they elicit in me when I look at these bottles. I mean, it's just, they're like bouquets. I'll see if I've got the other one. Hold on. Let me hold this one up. Hold on. I have them separated. So those ones are all my blues. And then I've got all the more sort of orangey ones here. So I've got the blues and the orange. And this is actually, I used up one. And this is Chalice Well water from Glastonbury.
Oh, right.
So I couldn't bring myself to throw the bottle away, the empty Aura-Soma bottle, because that's traumatic. I mean, what are we supposed to do with the empty bottles? Because I'm bonded.
What happens in Japan is that the therapists, the practitioners, the teachers gather all of the empty bottles together and they turn them into, through a glass factory, turn them into all sorts of amazing objects.
Okay.
It doesn't happen in Europe and it doesn't happen anywhere else, but in Japan, that's what happens. Everything there is recycled.
I mean, part of, what happens when you've had a trauma and where I'm at now with the PTSD is there's something called adjustment disorder. And that is where you get a lot of anxiety if something changes when you're not ready for the change.
Yeah.
And so when if I use up a bottle and then it's empty, I have adjustment disorder with throwing the bottle away. Because I'm now bonded energetically. I can
understand that.
Yeah. So what should I do with the empty bottles?
Love them, I think, Natalie.
Just keep them. Keep empty bottles, but then that seems like bad energy, keeping empty bottles.
Yeah, I can understand that. But I mean, and then, when you're ready to let go of them, you will.
Bury them in the garden, maybe.
Yeah, you could do that.
So they're in nature.
Yeah. Put them in the recycle bin, and so that... with the other glass, they would then be adding to the service of the bottle by bringing all the other glass to a different vibration.
All right. Well, Mike, is there anything else you wish to bring forth?
I really love to talk to you, and as you say, we could talk all day. So
yeah, we could.
We'll maybe do another one another time. Natalie.
Yes, I'd love to, and we could start with the square because now you've piqued my interest with the square.
I think that you should do one with a lady called Stephanie South, who she's really got a lot to say about the square and the cube and what she calls the synchronoton, and I think you'd have a really good time with her.
Done.
She runs an organization called the Law of Time.
Oh, I love it already. It sounds very sci-fi. It's probably not, but it sounds pretty sci-fi.
It is. No, it's really cosmic. You'd really, really love her. She's an absolute jewel.
Well, you'll be able to introduce me to Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, as always, Mike Booth, for sharing the essence of everything you are and that you let come through you for the benefit of others. It really is a privilege to share the time with you via Zoom. And in a way, the pandemic gifted us with this because I wasn't Zooming people before COVID. I refused to Zoom people, even quite, big fancy people. I'd be like, no, I like to do it in person. But now with the pandemic, we do it with Zoom, and here you are. And so it's something that
it's great. And it's great for now, and it's a way of really being able to relate. It's really lovely to see you. Give my love to Jason and all the people who managed to see this. Really, I hope that our conversation has been useful or interesting for you. And I really I'm grateful to Natalie for doing these things, because it is a medium by which we can relate at this time. And I think that relationship is very, very important for us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike Booth, thank you so much, as always, for taking time to be on the Great Escape podcast. I feel that little bit healed just having a conversation with you. So I hope everybody watching and listening got a good dose of your Mike Boothness there. We almost, I mean, you're the icing on the cake to Aura-Soma. We have all the goodies in the bottles, but then there's really you, and your essence and energy are the glue that holds it all together. Everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the emails that keep in touch with me saying, when are you coming back? And I apologize that I'm terrible, right? I'm terrible at the whole consistency of podcasts. But I'm trying to work on it. And you know what? I'm going to just be honest. It's part of a trauma thing. I need things to be perfect. And if I think there's something going to be a sound glitch in the podcast, I'll sit on it for months and months. And it's on me. It's my thing. And I'm working through it. And I'm trying to let life not be so perfect, because I'm not perfect. And my life certainly has not been perfect. Maybe yours hasn't either. So maybe we'll continue wading through our imperfect lives together in this imperfect world together, knowing that we are all on a rock hurtling through space together. And I'm wondering if he was serious about sending me a series bottle, because I think I need that, a dousing of it. I need a hose pipe of series all over me right now. I believe in it, and I'm looking forward to it coming. So, Mike, if you're watching this, I'm waiting for my bottle of series. All right, everybody. Thank you again. Much love from my heart. Wishing you strength to get through this. Try and do something creative, even if it's grabbing a pencil and a piece of paper. You are a creative soul and a creative spirit. And send me what you come up with. thegreyescape.com. You can contact me there. Take care, everyone. And I'll see you soon, hopefully, right here on The Grey Escape.